I don't know how that is going to work out, but Juma, I think these are pertinent issues for us to examine. Because I said it, I mean, I'm sure some persons heard me when we were reviewing the papers. For more than 3 decades, I've been hearing palliatives, and sometimes it's becoming somewhat irritating. And if we do measure the effect of palliatives, we also have to ask ourselves, for how long do palliatives work? And then what happens to those to whom you have offered palliatives, when now we are dealing with 133 million dimensionally poor human beings in this country? So if the palliatives had actually lifted them out of poverty and set them on the course of being productive economic agents, then go ahead with palliatives. Otherwise, it should be a rethink. Do you mind?
Let me take that.
So I think it's important to, in proffering a solution, right? What we are trying to, everyone agrees that the subsidy has to go, but how do we relate the sufferings of Nigerians and we still maintain natural gas is the only sustainable substitute to petrol? So like the NTA comrade mentioned, 650,000 barrels a day Dangote refinery, 200,000 barrels a day Boa refinery. Where's the crude oil going to come from? When you borrow money from foreign investors, which is where these funds come from, to develop your field, they expect you to sign long-term crude oil contracts so that you can pay back your dollar debt. If you sell to Nigeria, the receivable is naira, how are you going to pay back the dollars or the euros you borrowed? So we should support, instead, to export more of our crude oil. In case you've not noticed, the world is talking about hydrogen, solar. We have very limited opportunity to export as much of our crude oil while the market is still there, right? And then use natural gas, which we have more of in abundance, as a substitute. So we should focus on transitioning from dirtier hydrocarbons to cleaner hydrocarbons. And by the way, it's a lot easier to attract investment if you mention that that investment is going towards gas, because gas is considered a cleaner alternative, right? And in terms of cost, like I mentioned earlier, maybe this is really not sinking in. Today, you can buy gas at 110 naira equivalent a liter. Today, cheaper than subsidized fuel. Enough attention is not being paid.
Sorry, let me ask you this question. What happened to the CNG plan for gas? Because on Good Morning Nigeria, we had a number of conversations on this issue. The then Minister of State for Petroleum, TB Presiva, was here, he sat here or here, talking about it, how CNG will be available, how government was going to spend, 200 million or so for the reconfiguration of vehicles so that they could have hybrid, they could be hybridized. If you want to buy PMS, you buy PMS. If you want to buy CNG, you buy CNG. There's only one CNG station that I see around Abuja, somewhere in Jabi. The last time I drove past that place, it was under lock and key.
Sure.
And at some point when they were saying that the gas was available, I drove there, they said, oh God, they never supply us. So, and then this was all part of gas decade, and of course we know NATI's done extensive work on energy transition, and I think they're also part of government's energy transition arrangement, where we say the focus is on gas. So the point you are making about gas being cheaper, are we on the right path to moving to that? And if we are not, what can we do to promptly shunt, as it were, onto that lane?
Sure. We were invited, us and the IPMAN, to address stakeholders about a week ago by the former Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister Zainab, to address the CBN Governor, GMD of NNPC, representatives from the incoming administration, etc., on our proposal with IPMAN. In our submission, we highlighted that one of the reasons why CNG, despite the numerous benefits it has over petrol and diesel, hasn't really kicked off is most of the approach that has been adopted thus far has been development before planning instead of planning before development. Which is why we mentioned that a partnership with IPMAN, again, with over 30,000 active and inactive stations, which not only reduces the cost of capex, because when you pay for consumption of gas, you're paying for the infrastructure. By co-locating CNG on existing infrastructure, you're reducing the final price that the consumer will pay. This is planning. If you drive to an IPMAN or any filling station, if you look to the left or right, you'll probably see an auto workshop right there, right? Those auto workshops, converting 2 vehicles a day, will convert 60,000 vehicles in a day. That is planning. What Oga mentioned regarding not having paid or bought fuel at the subsidized rate, because that fuel is transported using diesel that is deregulated. And by the way, converting diesel trucks to CNG will reduce the cost of transportation by 80% today. This is not an opinion, it is a fact.
So what happened to that drive? Juma, I keep asking this question because it is useful for enlightenment and then for policy conversation. I don't know whether Nati wants to weigh in here, but you recall, Juma, we were told that there were timelines that were provided. Oh, CNG, they were going to start out with 100,000 vehicles around the capital city. It wasn't just only CNG for vehicles. We were also told that the pilot had been on for a long time, as you said, in Benin. Some of the commercial vehicles had been converted to CNG. And I think Desiane, when she was Minister of Petroleum, also spoke about that and rode with it as part of the accomplishments that they were doing. But we kept hearing about timelines, and that in fact we were told that they were also using it to power their generators in their private homes, not just for the industrial or manufacturer uses. All of a sudden, nobody heard again. There was supposed to be a communication team, and what happened? IPMAN wasn't part of it, or what? So
we all know that government rarely does anything well when it comes to business, right? The best initiatives oftentimes are those that are led by the private sector, right? So in that stakeholders engagement, we mentioned that the solution that is superior to subsidized petrol is here with us. And what is that solution? I put this to the central bank governor who was present, that the CBN has a 250 billion naira facility to support the utilization of gas in the country. That is a major solution to this issue. Why? NDIC published a report recently that out of 70 million account holders, only 2% had over 500,000 in their account. That is frightening. Every single country that has removed subsidy in 100% of the cases have moved their population to gas without exception. India, Bangladesh, Egypt, Iran, etc., etc., etc. Right. Gas is always the next best alternative. And the solution, there is funding for the keke owner to go and access 200,000 to convert their vehicle. For the civil servant to access 340,000 to convert their vehicle. For the truck owner to access to convert his truck. And again,
and commercial vehicles,
commercial vehicles. So this is quite disheartening that we have this solution. There's literally nothing that government needs to do.
But it's supposed to carry the people along.
The funding is there for people to access. It's to tell CBN, we're not asking for this funding. Allow people to access this funding in terms of loans, right? And why this makes a lot of sense. Remember, you can buy gas today at 110 naira to fill your vehicle or keke or bus. So the difference between 110 naira and petrol that is selling for over 500 naira is enough to pay for the cost of conversion within a few years. You won't even notice that you've borrowed 200 or 350,000 to convert your vehicle. The difference in the savings is sufficient to pay for the conversion
there are
kits.
other areas we need to look at.
Yes,
Okay.
I think he has a very good point. But for purposes of our discussion, we need to locate our discussion today, benchmark our discussion within the paradigm of sequence. I think following the discussions for which we are here on the removal of subsidy, we are more concerned now on the immediate and medium-term solutions to stabilize the economy, stabilize the country. And then the fundamental point he has raised is the main reason why we need to revisit the Nigerian gas implementation plan. That plan has been on for a longer time, but going back to your question, what does it really mean in the removal of subsidy? These are part of the investments that will come into the sector when subsidy is completely removed, as it has been done now, deregulation. They will now become an opportunity for new thinking and new opportunities that we have been beclouded over the years by subsidy.
Exactly.
The investments in the sector that will come in will be massive. And you could see the slight reaction of the stock exchange, of the stock market to this policy decision was made. I mean, stock market reacted positively and went up. And there are still investors that are waiting, because our country has been known for consistent policy reversals. They are now waiting to just see, can this actually be real? Remember, the decision on this issue is not just peculiar. All global institutions, development institutions, had consistently recommended for Nigeria to do away with subsidy. The World Bank, I don't want to mention the IMF, because the IMF is perceived sometimes, but IMF had sincerely made this recommendation a long time ago. Our global institution, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, the global headquarters, has consistently also encouraged us as a local chapter to push for this, but there's a limit to which we can do, except the recommendations that have been in our report since 2006. So the whole issue of gas is the main reason why we are interested in energy transition, because most of the companies are now even changing their names to energy. Nobody is talking of oil and gas. But for now, we know that oil and gas, oil in particular, will still be with Nigeria for a very, very long time.
But there are
that's the reality.
Sorry, sir. There are two issues we need to look at very carefully. We are not discussing. A long-term plan is very, very good, but we need some short-term plans to ameliorate the situation we found ourselves in. The first one is that the president also mentioned it in his broadcast, and we want it to be followed up and to be done. That if, for example, we could improve the power supply in our country, we would have reduced a lot of expenditure on use of oil, PMS, and diesel to power generators. So can we, encourage the government to increase impetus in making sure that power is available to Nigerians? That's one. Secondly, we need to be very careful in giving out palliative. We should not encourage incentivizing indolence and look. There are a lot of people in this country that are poor because they choose to be poor. And no amount of incentive you give to them that
What do you mean by that?
Exactly.
How can you choose to be poor?
I'm coming. Look, let me tell you. I was discussing with the security guard in my office. He is a security guard who receives less than 20,000 naira a month. He has 2 wives. He has 5 children. And I was telling him, do you go to the farm as a measure to make up for the little income that you make? He says, yes, he goes to the farm. I said, with members of your family that are old, strong enough